In a laboratory experiment, you wish to determine the initial speed of a dart just after it leaves a dart gun. The dart of mass m is fired with the gun very close to a wooden block of mass capital M0, which hangs from a cord of length L and negligible mass as shown above. Assume the size of the block is negligible compared to L, and that the dart is moving horizontally when it hits the left side of the block at its center and becomes embedded in it. The block swings up to a maximum angle theta max from the vertical. Express your answers to the following in terms of m, m sub 0, L, theta max, and g. So this system is something, a physics thing we talk about a lot called a ballistic pendulum. And the idea is that after hitting the block, as they get embedded, they swing up to here, and of course there's still an arrow, right? Still a dart stuck in there. And we have 3 stages. Before hitting and after hitting, we can conserve momentum. And then, all right, that's during the collision. And then after the collision, we can conserve energy. Why can't we conserve energy the whole time? Because during the collision, the dart becomes embedded in the block, which means that it's a non-elastic collision, which means we know some energy is lost to deformation, either heat or light, or just the energy of bending things so that they stick instead of bouncing off. All right, so we'll walk through and see what that implies for all of these things. Part A, determine the speed v sub 0 of the dart immediately before it strikes the block. Well, here we have our dart with speed v0 and a block not moving, and then a collision happens, and then we have the dart stuck inside, so now we have m0 plus m, and it's moving with speed v. We don't know v, but if we knew v, then life would be easy, because we would be able to say that little m times v0 equals their sum, times v. For v0 is m0 plus little m over m0 all times v. Now our problem is we don't know v, but we can say this. We can say, well, now we have this thing moving with some v, and then it goes up some height, and it is at rest. So this has speed v, and this is at rest. So we can say that 1/2 m0 plus little m v square, the initial kinetic energy, becomes just m0 plus little m g h, the kinetic energy. Potential energy. And so v would be, let's see, the masses would cancel out, and we'd have the square root of 2gh. Problem is, we don't have h. So now we have to look back at our figure, and we gotta say, oh, I gotta figure out h. So I'm gonna say I have a string of length L, and it goes through an angle theta, and h would be that height. We should remember that the string stays length L, and so if we think of this triangle, we have L and theta, and then this side is L minus h, since that side plus h is the original length. So we have cosine of theta equals L minus h over L. Cross multiplied by L, we have L cos theta equals L minus h, which means h equals L minus L cosine theta, which we can factor to be L times the factor 1 minus cos theta. This allows us to then go back up to here and say that the velocity is square root of 2gl times 1 minus cos theta, and it's, remember, all under square root, which allows us to then go back up to here and end up with, at the end, that the initial speed is big M0 plus little m over big M0 times the square root of 2gl 1 minus cosine theta. That's a fair bit of work, but also it accounts for 1/3 of the points, so that's not unreasonable. Part B, the dart and block subsequently swing as a pendulum. Determine the tension in the cord when it returns to the lowest point of the swing. The pendulum nature is going to be a distractor. Instead, what we should say is we have this thing attached by a string, and at that point it is moving with speed v, right? It will have gone up to 0 and come back to the same speed, and we want to find what the tension would be, so let's do it for a diagram. At that moment we have the weight pulling down, and we have the tension pulling up, and we have an acceleration towards the center, which we know is of magnitude v squared over L, because the radius of this circle is the length of the string L. So now we do Newton's second law, and we say that the sum of the forces is the total mass times A, or Ft minus m0 plus m times g equals m0 plus m times AC, which is m0 plus m times v squared over L. So the tension would have to be m0 plus little m times g plus v squared over L. But we got a value for v squared over L in the last problem, so I'm just going to put that in. 2gl1 minus cos theta over L. So we have m0 plus little m times g plus 2g minus 2g cos theta, or big M0 plus little m times 3g minus 2g cos theta, which can be moderately simplified as big M0 plus little m times g times 3 minus 2 cos theta. Here I guess theta is theta max that we should have been using the whole way along. At this point you're at 9 out of 15 and it hasn't been so bad. Part C. At your lab table you have the following additional equipment: a meter stick, a protractor, a spring, a stopwatch, 5 meters of string, set of known masses, and 5 more blocks of mass M0. Without destroying or disassembling any of this equipment, design another practical method for determining the speed of the dart just after it leaves the gun. Indicate the measurements you would take and how the speed could be determined from these. There are lots of possible answers, so I'm just going to talk about the rubric and then we'll see if we can construct something that would fix it. They say that you get 4 points for having all of the following. 1, a practical procedure that uses some or all of the apparatus and would work. 2, recognition of any assumptions that must be made. 3, indication of the proper mathematical computation using the variables measured. You would get 2 out of the 4 points if the description was not complete, but it would work, or if the mathematical work did not clearly specify the variables used or any combination thereof. And you got no points if the procedure would not be feasible in a laboratory situation with the apparatus listed, or if the procedure was merely a repeat of that outlined in Part A. So you really don't get away with just saying, I hook up things up and measure their angle and see what happens. What could we do here? Well, since you have meter sticks and stopwatches, you really could do things, I think, as simple as saying we measure the distance from the launcher to a block that's being held in place, and then do a d over t for that would probably work. Since it's a lab table, we really can't assume low friction, although you could conceivably talk about doing a different ballistic pendulum experiment where you hang the block and then we fire the dart up this way and we measure the amplitude of the combined block plus dart. Or we could measure the period, and we could say something like, we could get V max is omega times the amplitude, so 2 pi over t times A, where we'll have measured A plus 1 period. and then use our V equals, or V0 equals the other stuff, which is not, I think, the same as repeating. And that would work. There are a lot of practical answers. Probably something to do with, you might be able to measure the coefficient of kinetic friction, and then, right, if we could measure mu, which we might be able to do with, for instance, the standard spring to give us a standard force. Yeah, we could do that. We could hook up the block and drag it at a constant rate and then see how much the spring stretched, and that would tell us what the frictional force would have to be, and then we can get mu, and then once we have mu, we could say, well, when we fire the dart into the box, it would travel some distance by skitching along the floor. So we'd measure like that distance, and we can measure therefore the acceleration, and then compute the initial speed that we hit at, and then go back into here. So something like that. Basically, we need to measure the speed of the spring and box and block. Don't really see why we need things like multiple sets of M0, but we could certainly use them. It's a 4-point answer, so it requires some detail, but not worth spending 20 or 30 minutes on. Part D. The block is now shot into a block of wood that is fixed in place. The block exerts a force F vector on the dart that is proportional to the dart's velocity V vector in an opposite direction. That is, F vector is minus B V vector, where B is a constant. Derive an expression for the distance L that the dart penetrates into the block in terms of M and V0 and B. So to sort of draw our picture here, here's our block. I'm going to make it a little grayscale because it's not important, really. Here's our dart, and at t equals 0 and position of 0, but the velocity is some initial velocity, and then somewhere later it has come to rest at t final. At x is some position L, which is what we're looking for, but v is 0. And we'd like to find those things. So we say, well, from second law, the sum of the forces has to equal the mass times the acceleration. So minus bv equals ma, but this is m times dv dt. And so I get dv over v is minus b over m dt by separation of variables. And then I say, well, then I've got to be able to integrate from my initial speed to some other speed. And I go from 0 to some time. The integral of dv over v is the natural log, so I get the natural log of v over v0. And over here I get minus b over mt. And so we find that v is v0 e to the minus b over mt, which is what we expect from a first-order drag equation. So this is pretty much what we expect, exponential decay. Sadly, that's not what they want. They want the length. And so we need to adjust a little further, and we need to say, well, v is dx dt. And so dx is v0 e to the minus b over mt dt. So again, we're going to integrate from 0 to some generic position L, and then we're going to integrate from 0 to some generic time t, and we're going to find that L minus 0, of course, is, and then we're going to do our integrals. So we're going to have v0 e to the minus b over mt and then we'll have over b minus b over m 0 to t. So minus mv0 over b, and then e to the minus b over mt minus e to the minus 0. But of course, that's just 1. And we have this minus sign and that minus sign. And so we end up in the ultimate level that the length we travel as a function of time is mv0 over b, 1 minus e to the minus b over mt. And then what we want to have happen, of course, is we want to say that the thing we want, L, is what happens if we wait a real long time. Now this is kind of bizarre because this says that the thing never gets to rest, right? It never actually stops. It never reaches its maximum thing. But we're kind of used to this weirdness now in physics. And we say, okay, so 1 minus all of this stuff times mv0 over b. We pull the mv0 over b, and then we have minus mv0 over b, the limit as t goes to infinity of e to the minus b over mt, but that, of course, is 0, and so our actual L is just mv0 over b, and that's what we get. Here is a thing which was famed at the reading when this problem was given, which is that that is an awful lot of work and is worth 2 out of 15 points. So this is one of those cases where jumping to the end ends up not working in your favor, unless, of course, you have basically remembered the result and then just sort of hand wave it, because you get 1 point for expressing the acceleration a equals dv dt, and you get the other point for saying that L is going to be the integral of dv dt times dt. So the points were relatively easy to get, even though it was a lot of work to get them at the end.